You get him a phone? God, you're so cheap, my sister sneered. I'm done, I said, taking back my gift and walking out. By morning, my phone exploded with texts. I never thought I'd have to choose between my financial future and my sister's family, but last month, I finally took back my life after years of being their personal ATM. The breaking point wasn't some massive betrayal or a single unforgivable act. It was a moment of pure entitled disrespect that made 10 years of resentment crystallize in an instant. My name is Morgan. I'm 32, single, no kids, and until recently I was the unofficial sponsor of my sister Terry's lifestyle. She's 36 with a 16-year-old son, Noah. What started as occasional help for a struggling single mom became a decade-long drain that nearly destroyed my financial future. But when my teenage nephew threw a tantrum over getting just an iPhone instead of a luxury car for his birthday, something inside me finally snapped. The path to becoming my sister's piggy bank started innocently enough. When Noah was 6, Terry lost her job and needed help with rent for a couple of months. Of course I stepped in. She's my sister and Noah was just a little boy. 2 months turned into 6. 6 months turned into a year. Before I knew it, I was covering not just emergencies but regular expenses. $1,400 for rent, $350 for utilities, $500 for groceries, $400 for Noah's activities. Every single month. Meanwhile, I lived in a cramped one-bedroom apartment, drove a 10-year-old Toyota, and pushed back my own dreams. No house down payment. Minimal retirement savings, no exotic vacations, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing I was helping family. At least that's what I told myself to justify the constant drain. What made it worse was watching Terry's choices. She'd find jobs but quit when they became too stressful. She'd date men who contributed nothing. She'd come home with designer bags while I was eating ramen to make up for the money I'd sent her. Each time I tried to discuss finances, she'd cry about how hard it was being a single mom, how Noah needed stability, how she was doing her best. And our parents, they enabled the whole thing. Morgan, you're so blessed with your career. Terry needs more help with Noah, he's just a child. Never mind that I worked 60-hour weeks to climb from entry-level to senior management while Terry called in sick whenever she felt like sleeping in. The demands grew like weeds. First it was just rent. Then it was utilities, then it was Noah's sports equipment, then it was braces, then it was a small loan for a car down payment. None of these loans were ever repaid. Each time I hesitated, the emotional manipulation would start. I guess Noah just won't have Christmas this year, or we'll just have to live in our car, but that's fine. I almost broke free 3 years ago. I'd saved for months to take a dream trip to Japan, somewhere I'd wanted to visit since college. 2 days before my flight, Terry called crying that they were being evicted. I canceled my non-refundable trip and sent her $3,000. Later I discovered the eviction notice was actually just a late rent reminder, and she used most of my money for a weekend spa trip with her friends because she needed to de-stress. Still I stayed, still I paid, until Noah's 16th birthday. I'd saved for months to buy him the latest iPhone. $1,200 isn't small change, especially on top of the $700 I'd already spent on the party Terry insisted Noah deserved: venue rental, catering, decorations. Things he wouldn't have had without my checkbook. I was excited to give him something special, something he'd been hinting about for months. The party was in full swing when Noah opened my gift. The bright blue Apple box sat in his hands for maybe 2 seconds before his face twisted into a look of pure disgust. An iPhone? Seriously? He looked around at his friends, then back at me with pure contempt. Jake's parents got him a BMW for his birthday. I thought you were getting me a car. What am I supposed to do with another phone? The room went silent. My cheeks burned as 24 teenagers and parents stared at me, but it wasn't Noah's reaction that broke me. He was a teenager after all. It was what happened next. Terry laughed, actually laughed. Well, what did you expect him to say? You make 6 figures and you get him a phone. Everyone knows sweet 16 means a car. God, you're so cheap and clueless. 10 years of resentment crystallized in that moment. The room faded away as memories flashed through my mind. Terry showing off her new highlights while I postponed dental work I couldn't afford. Noah carelessly breaking the iPad I'd scraped together to buy him for Christmas, then shrugging it off because Aunt Morgan will just get me another one. My parents' disappointed looks when I said I couldn't host Thanksgiving because I was picking up extra shifts to cover Terry's property tax bill. Something cold and hard settled in my chest. My hands stopped shaking. The noise in my head went quiet. I reached out and took the iPhone from Noah's hands. Actually, Noah, I think I'll keep this. Seems like you don't need it. My voice was steady, almost unrecognizable to my own ears. And starting today, I'm done financially supporting both of you. Terry's laugh cut off abruptly. What? You heard me, I'm done. No more rent payments, no more utilities, no more cash transfers, nothing. You can't be serious, we depend on you. Her voice pitched upward, panic replacing her earlier smugness. You've depended on me for 10 years, that ends today. My parents stepped in then, my mother's face flushed with anger, my father's with shock. Morgan, you're overreacting, Mom hissed. It was just a misunderstanding, Noah's just disappointed. No, Mom, this isn't about the iPhone, this is about 10 years of taking advantage of me, 10 years of ungratefulness, 10 years of sacrificing my future for people who see me as nothing but an ATM. How dare you? Terry's voice had reached that familiar shrill pitch she used whenever she was about to get her way. After everything I've been through as a single mother, after all the sacrifices I've made. The old me would have backed down, apologized, written another check. Instead, I picked up my purse and headed for the door. Send the guests home, Terry, party's over. I walked out of the restaurant to the sound of my sister screaming that I was ruining everything. For once, I didn't look back. That night, I blocked their numbers, poured myself a glass of wine, and did something I'd been putting off for a decade. I made a comprehensive financial plan for my future, my retirement, my house down payment. The sudden absence of a $2,650 monthly Terry and Noah-shaped hole in my budget made the numbers look almost miraculous. By morning, my inbox was overflowing. Texts and voicemails had piled up on my blocked devices. Flying monkeys had been dispatched, cousins, aunts, family, friends, all telling me how cruel I was being, how family should support family, how Terry and Noah would be homeless without me. I ignored them all and drafted an email. Terry, this email serves as formal notice that I will no longer be providing financial support of any kind. All previous monetary gifts were exactly that, gifts, not loans with expectation of repayment, though you've claimed they were loans when it suited you. For clarity, I will not be paying your July rent or any expenses going forward. I will not respond to financial emergencies. I will not be guilted, manipulated, or shamed into changing my position. I've supported you for 10 years while sacrificing my own financial security. That ends now. Morgan. I sent it, then called my bank to cancel all automatic transfers to Terry's accounts. I documented every gift, every transfer, every loan in case she tried to claim I owed her anything legally. Then I took a deep breath and did something radical. I scheduled a long overdue therapy appointment. The fallout was nuclear. Terry's landlord called me directly when her rent was late. Apparently I was listed as an emergency contact without my knowledge. I blocked his number too. My parents showed up at my apartment unannounced, my mother in tears, my father stone-faced with disappointment. She's going to be evicted, Morgan. Is that what you want, for your nephew to be homeless? Mom's voice broke on the word homeless, a calculated touch. Terry makes enough to cover rent if she budgets properly, I replied calmly. She has a job, she chooses to spend on luxuries before necessities. You know it's not that simple, Dad said. She's always struggled with money management. Yes, because everyone rushes in to fix her problems, not anymore, at least not by me. They left angry, but I stayed firm. My therapist called it a healthy boundary. I called it survival. 3 weeks after the birthday disaster, Terry, Noah, and my parents ambushed me at my apartment. Noah's eyes were red-rimmed, Terry looked disheveled, and my parents wore matching expressions of grim determination. You're destroying this family, Terry shouted the moment I opened the door. Noah's school called because his activity fees are past due, the landlord's threatening eviction, all because you decided to have some kind of psychotic break. I stayed calm. Those are your responsibilities, Terry, not mine. You've always helped us, you can't just stop because your feelings got hurt over some stupid birthday gift. Noah stepped forward then, eyes downcast. I'm sorry about the phone, Aunt Morgan, I was a jerk, I didn't mean it. His voice sounded rehearsed, empty. This isn't about the phone, Noah, this is about years of being taken for granted by all of you. My mother tried next, her voice soft and manipulative. We know you're upset, sweetie, but don't take it out on Noah, he's just a child. He's 16, Mom, old enough to understand that money doesn't grow on trees and that treating people with respect matters. The conversation spiraled from there. Terry threatened to tell everyone at my workplace that I'd abandoned my family. My father suggested I might have mental health issues. When nothing worked, they switched to begging, then back to threats. Finally, I'd had enough. You need to leave now or I'll call the police for harassment. You wouldn't dare, Terry gasped. I picked up my phone. Try me. They left, but the war was just beginning. Terry started a smear campaign on social media, painting herself as the struggling single mom abandoned by her heartless sister. Flying monkeys continued to call and text. Anonymous gift boxes of ramen noodles were delivered to my office with cards saying, "Thought you might need these since you're so broke you can't help family." I stayed silent and strong. I blocked, I documented, I focused on healing. The changes in my life were immediate and profound. Without the constant financial drain, I was able to increase my 401k contributions. I started seeing a financial advisor. I began house hunting. I slept better, the constant anxiety about Terry's next crisis finally lifting from my shoulders. Through mutual friends, I heard that Terry was finally facing reality. Her first wake-up call was having her electricity shut off for non-payment. Then came the late fees on every bill. Noah had to drop his expensive travel soccer team when she couldn't afford the fees. Most shocking of all, Terry had to take on extra shifts at work to make ends meet. 3 months after what my therapist and I now called the emancipation, I received an unexpected text from an unknown number. "Aunt Morgan, it's Noah, got a new phone number, can we talk?" After careful consideration, I agreed to meet him for coffee. The Noah who showed up wasn't the entitled teenager from the birthday party. This Noah looked tired. His designer clothes had been replaced with simple jeans and a plain t-shirt. He had a name tag from the local grocery store clipped to his backpack. "I got a job," he said, following my gaze to the name tag. "Been working there about a month now. It's just bagging groceries and cart return, but it's something." "That's good," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "I never realized," he started, then stopped, swallowing hard. "I never realized how much you did for us until it was gone. Mom always said you helped out sometimes, but I didn't know you were paying our rent, our utilities, my activities, everything. Your mom should have been honest with you about our financial situation." "She's mad all the time now," he said, staring into his coffee. "Blames you for everything. But last week I found all these shopping bags in her closet, stuff with tags still on that she bought right before my birthday, expensive stuff, when we could barely make rent." He looked up, his eyes surprisingly clear. "That's when I realized maybe it wasn't all your fault." We talked for an hour, really talked, possibly for the first time. I learned that Noah had quit the soccer team voluntarily when he realized how much it cost, that he'd sold his gaming system to help with bills, that he was saving half of every paycheck for college because he now understood that wasn't my responsibility. I didn't agree to resume financial support, but I did cautiously reestablish a relationship with my nephew. We met for coffee every couple of weeks. I helped him research scholarships. I taught him how to budget. The entitled child was growing into a thoughtful young man, courtesy of the real world. Terry remained another story. 6 months after the emancipation, she showed up at my apartment unannounced. She looked better than the last time I'd seen her, hair done, nails manicured, which immediately put me on guard. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she said when I reluctantly let her in. "Maybe I did take advantage a little, but you could have talked to me instead of just cutting us off completely." No apology, no acknowledgement of the years of manipulation, just a subtle suggestion that I'd been the unreasonable one. "I tried talking to you, Terry, for years. You never listened." "Well, I'm listening now." She smiled her familiar, calculating smile. "Noah misses you, we both do. We're family, Morgan, we should be able to work through anything." "What exactly are you hoping to work through?" I asked, already knowing the answer. She had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. "Well, things have been tight, as you can imagine. Noah's college fund isn't growing like it should, and there's a program he wants to do this summer, really good for his college applications, but it's expensive." "No," she blinked. "I haven't even told you how much. It doesn't matter how much. The answer is no, I'm not financially supporting you or Noah anymore. But you're doing so well, it wouldn't even be a big deal for you." An apology without change is just manipulation, Terry. You haven't changed. You're still looking for handouts instead of solutions. She left angry, but I felt lighter than air. I'd faced her without crumbling, without guilt, without reaching for my checkbook. A year after the emancipation, my life is unrecognizable. I've closed on a beautiful condo. My retirement accounts are growing steadily. I'm dating someone who respects my boundaries and pays his own bills. I've even booked that trip to Japan, finally. Noah is thriving in his own way. He's working part-time, keeping his grades up, applying for scholarships. We have dinner twice a month, and he recently asked me to help him open his first investment account with his savings. The entitled teen is becoming a responsible adult. Terry lost her apartment and had to downsize to a smaller place in a less desirable neighborhood. She picked up more shifts at work out of necessity. According to Noah, she's still bitter and blames me for all her financial problems, but she's surviving. Sometimes that's the most loving thing you can do for someone. Let them face the consequences of their own choices. My parents remain caught in the middle. They still believe I should help Terry more, but they've stopped actively pressuring me. Last Christmas, my mother actually said something that gave me hope. Noah seems different, more mature. Maybe this whole situation has had some positive effects. It was as close to an acknowledgement as I was likely to get. The hardest lesson I've learned is that sometimes the most difficult boundaries to set are with the people we love most. For 10 years, I thought I was being kind, helpful, a good sister and aunt. In reality, I was enabling destructive patterns that hurt all of us. My financial support wasn't helping Terry become self-sufficient. It was teaching Noah that he deserved handouts. It was preventing both of them from experiencing the natural consequences of their choices. Sometimes love means saying no. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is stop rescuing people from their own decisions. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with Terry. Perhaps someday she'll truly understand that my boundaries aren't punishment but protection for both of us. Until then, I'll keep living my life on my terms, saving for my goals and modeling financial responsibility for Noah. The chains of guilt and obligation that I carried for a decade have finally fallen away. I'm not just financially free, I'm free. Your brother has always needed more, my mom excused after excluding me in her will. I cut off her monthly payments. Now she's begging. I'm 28 years old. I work at a consulting firm downtown, helping businesses find their feet in an ever-changing market. On the surface, things are fine. I have my job, a small apartment, and a social circle that I can rely on. But there's one thing that always looms over my life: my family. Growing up, I always felt like I had to fight for a piece of my mom's attention. It wasn't that Barbara, my mother, was neglectful in the typical sense. She wasn't cold or distant, but there was always a certain emotional disconnect. For as long as I could remember, my younger brother James was the center of her world. He was always the one who needed more attention, more nurturing, more everything. James had this way of drawing people in. From a young age, he had perfected the art of being the helpless one in the family. He wasn't a troublemaker, but he knew exactly how to manipulate situations to his advantage. All he had to do was show a little vulnerability, act like he needed help with something, and boom, he'd have Mom wrapped around his finger, and she always fell for it. I didn't have the same luxury. I wasn't helpless. I was the responsible one. While James would skip school, sleep in late, or refuse to contribute to anything at home, I was the one holding everything together. I was the one who made sure I stayed on top of my grades, who helped out with the housework, who got a job at 16 to start saving for college. But none of that seemed to matter to Mom. I wasn't the problem kid, so I never needed extra attention. I never needed to be coddled. James, on the other hand, seemed to need everything. And Mom was always there to give it to him. Even when he got older and started to rely on her more and more, she never stopped being his safety net. I can still picture those moments in our house when James would wander into the kitchen, looking pitiful with his hoodie pulled over his head, and without fail, Mom would be there. "What's wrong, sweetie? Are you okay?" Even if nothing was wrong, he knew how to make it seem like it. He didn't have a job, didn't pay rent, didn't do much of anything, but he knew how to play the role of the eternal child. And somehow that was enough to make Mom feel like he was the one who needed all of her energy. Then there was me. I tried to make mom proud by excelling at school, by becoming financially independent, by helping out at home. I thought I was doing all the right things. I thought that if I just kept doing my part, she'd notice. I thought that if I helped her with money, if I sent her a little more each month to cover her bills, then I would earn her approval. But that never seemed to be the case. Mom was always so grateful for the money I sent her, but it never felt like it was truly about me. It felt like it was about keeping the peace, about doing what I was supposed to do as the good daughter. I sent her money every month, even though I was barely scraping by myself. I was juggling student loans, bills, a full-time job, and still I always found a way to make sure I could send money home. But it wasn't the same kind of gratitude I saw when James was around. There was no real appreciation for what I was doing, it was just expected. As time went on, I began to notice more and more that I was being taken for granted. And it wasn't just about the money, it was about everything. I was the one who was always expected to sacrifice, to do what no one else would. And James, he never had to lift a finger. He was the lost soul, the one who couldn't quite make it in life, the one who needed saving. At first, I didn't mind too much. I loved my mom and I wanted to help her. But as the years went by, I began to feel like I was just a means to an end. I was a financial lifeline, a safety net, but not someone who was truly seen or valued. Things started to take a darker turn when I began noticing how much control James was gaining. I always knew he had a way with mom, but it wasn't until I really started paying attention that I realized just how deep his influence over her ran. He was using her for everything. He had figured out how to manipulate her so well that it was almost sickening. It wasn't just emotional manipulation anymore, he was now pulling the strings of her financial decisions. I would hear him ask her for money under the guise of needing it for something important. Sometimes it was for a car payment. Other times it was to help pay off a debt that he couldn't manage on his own. And every time, without fail, mom would give it to him. She'd either write him a check or hand him cash without asking a single question. I'll never forget the time I found out he had asked mom to help him buy a new car. A brand new car. Not a cheap one either, something flashy, something he didn't need. And she handed him the money without hesitation, despite the fact that her bills were piling up and she had been asking me for extra money to cover her utilities. I was furious, not just because he was asking for something so extravagant, but because mom had no boundaries. She had become so blinded by his manipulations that she didn't even see what was happening. She was giving him money for everything while I was left on the side, barely scraping by and still expected to keep giving. And then, it hit me, James wasn't just manipulating her for small things. He was manipulating her for big things. I started seeing how he was controlling the family finances, how he was setting the tone for every financial decision mom made. He was always in charge, always the one who dictated what they spent. I could see how he had started to condition her to make her feel guilty for saying no. He would say things like, "I'm your son, mom, I need you," or "I don't know what I'd do without you," and that was all it took. She couldn't say no to him. She couldn't stop herself from giving him whatever he wanted. And that's when I started to feel the real weight of what had been happening all along. I wasn't just being ignored or undervalued. I was being used. My mother was using me to fund a lifestyle that allowed James to stay dependent and lazy. She wasn't helping him grow up, she was enabling his immaturity. And in doing so, she had created a monster, a manipulative, entitled person who would never learn to stand on his own feet. I started to feel like I had been nothing more than a cash machine, just an extension of her financial lifeline, and James was the one who got all the attention and all the love. Then came the moment that changed everything. I was over at the house one afternoon helping mom go through some old files she had stored in the attic. We were going through boxes of bills, receipts, and tax papers when I came across something that made my stomach drop, her will. It was completely unexpected. I didn't even know she had updated it, but there it was, her name boldly scrawled at the top of the page. I skimmed through it at first, thinking it was just another old draft or something irrelevant, until I saw the words, "All assets, including property and savings, shall be transferred to my son, James." My heart sank, I couldn't breathe. What the hell? She had left everything to him. Everything. The house, the savings, all the money she had been getting from me every month, all the sacrifices I'd made for her, everything was for James. I felt a cold rush of anger mixed with a deep, aching sense of betrayal. How could she do this to me? How could she choose him, the one who had done nothing to deserve it, the one who had never shown any ambition, any care for anyone except himself? I closed the will and shoved it back into the box as if by doing so I could erase the reality of it. But I couldn't. The words haunted me. I was suddenly filled with a mix of rage and hurt, like I was suffocating under the weight of all the years I had spent trying to make things work for us, for a family that didn't even see me. The days that followed felt like I was walking through a fog. I couldn't stop thinking about the will, about how everything I had worked for, every sacrifice I had made meant nothing. It wasn't just the financial side of it. It was the fact that my mother had chosen James over me, over everything we had shared, every moment I had believed we were close. She had let him manipulate her for years, and I had been so blind to it. I felt like a fool. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much of our relationship had been built on lies. Well, maybe not lies, but certainly on things unsaid. My entire life I had believed that I was doing the right thing by helping her, that it was my duty as her daughter to support her, to be the good, responsible one. I never questioned why I was the only one doing it. I never questioned why I was always the one to pick up the slack, to be the stable force in our family. But now I couldn't stop questioning everything. Every phone call with Mom felt strained now. When I spoke to her, all I could think about was how she had been blind to James's manipulation, how she had never once acknowledged what I had done for her. Every time she called to thank me for sending money or helping out with something, it felt like a slap in the face. It wasn't that I didn't want to help her. It was that it felt like she didn't even care about what I had done. She didn't even realize how much I had given, how much I had sacrificed to keep everything running, to make her life a little easier. I knew deep down that I had to confront her, but I couldn't shake the fear. I had always tried to be the good daughter, the one who kept things together. I had never been the rebellious one. I was the one who always did what was expected of me. And now everything felt like it was falling apart. How could I confront my own mother? How could I accuse her of something that deep down I had always feared was true, that she loved James more than me? That everything I had done for her was nothing more than an obligation in her eyes. That evening I called her. My hands were shaking as I dialed the number. The phone rang for what felt like an eternity before she finally picked up. "Hello?" Her voice was warm, familiar, but it felt distant somehow. "Hi, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head, wondering what this was about. "What's going on, Ashley?" she finally asked, her tone changing slightly, sensing the seriousness in my voice. "I found the will, Mom," I said, my voice coming out in a rush. "I know about James." The words hit the air with the weight of a ton of bricks. I could feel the tension in the room immediately. My heart was racing, but I pushed on. "I don't understand," I continued. "Why him? After everything I've done for you, I've been supporting you, helping out every month, and you've left everything to him. Why?" For a long moment there was silence. I could hear her breathing on the other end, but she didn't say anything. It felt like hours passed, but finally she spoke. "Ashley," she started slowly, almost as if she were choosing her words carefully. "James has always needed more. He's always been lost. I've tried to give him everything I can. He's not like you. You've always been so strong, so independent. You've never needed me the way he does." The words hit me like a slap. "What do you mean, he needs you more?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. "I've always been here for you, always tried to make your life easier. But it's never been enough. You've never really seen me, have you? It's always been about James. Everything I've done for you, all the sacrifices I've made, it's never been enough." There was another long pause. "I didn't mean for it to be like that," she said quietly. "I never meant for you to feel like this." "Well, that's the problem, Mom. You didn't mean for it to happen, but it has. You've let him manipulate you, and I've been here giving everything I have to make up for his laziness. And now you've left him everything, everything." I could feel the anger rising within me, but I tried to keep my voice calm. Why have you done this?" I don't know, she admitted, her voice breaking. I guess I've just been blinded by my own guilt. I've been trying to make up for all the things he's lost, and I didn't see how much you were doing for me. I didn't realize. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My whole life I had tried to do what was right, tried to be the daughter she needed me to be, and now she was telling me she didn't even see it. I had been invisible to her. Everything I had given was just expected, nothing special, just a job I had to do because it was my duty. I didn't know what to say to that. I was torn between wanting to scream at her to tell her how wrong she was and wanting to cry because I knew deep down she would never understand. She would never truly see me, not the way I needed her to. I have to go, Mom, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. I need some space. I need to figure out what to do next. The line went quiet and I could hear her sobbing softly on the other end, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. I couldn't. I hung up, feeling a weight lift off my chest, but also a deep sense of loss. I had just confronted my mother, but in doing so, I had also lost her. There was no going back after this. I was done being the invisible daughter. It was time to take control of my life. My emotions swirling, I realized something else. This wasn't just about the will. It wasn't just about James. It was about me finally standing up for myself. It was about me learning that I was worth more than just being the family's financial support. It was about learning to love myself enough to let go, and that was the hardest thing of all. The days after the confrontation felt like I had just stepped off a cliff. My mind was in constant chaos. I had finally said the words I needed to say, the words I had kept bottled up for so long. But the moment they left my mouth, I felt an emptiness take over me, like I had just severed a lifeline that I had been holding on to for years. For a brief moment, I almost regretted what I had done. But deep down, I knew I couldn't go back. That's when I made the decision to stop. I called my bank and froze the automatic transfers I had set up for my mom. It felt like the hardest thing I had ever done, but at the same time, it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I was stopping the cycle that had kept me in a place where I was only valued for what I could provide. It was the hardest thing to do because I felt guilty, like I was abandoning her. But the guilt started to fade once I realized that I had been abandoning myself all along. I couldn't explain to anyone how much it hurt. To walk away from someone you've spent your whole life trying to help, trying to make proud, was a pain that cut deeper than any betrayal I had ever known. I had always believed that family was everything, but I had to face the fact that sometimes family can hurt you the most. As I distanced myself, I began to focus more on my own life. It felt like I was waking up from a long slumber. There was so much I had neglected, the things I loved, the things that made me happy. It was like I had spent all these years just going through the motions, doing what I thought I had to do. But now I started to rediscover myself. I took up painting again. It had been something I had loved as a child, but somewhere along the way I had stopped. I guess I didn't have time for it. I didn't have the energy. But now, with the weight of my responsibilities finally lifted, I found myself picking up brushes and letting the colors flow. I also started spending more time with my friends, people who had been there for me when I needed them. I had always kept them at arm's length, thinking that my family had to come first. But now, I realized that real support didn't come from family alone. It came from people who saw you for who you were, not just what you could do for them. Still, I couldn't ignore the fact that my relationship with my mom was in shambles. I hadn't spoken to her since our argument. I knew that the wound was too fresh for us to talk yet, but I wondered how long it would take before the silence became unbearable. A few weeks later, I got a call from James. I stared at the phone for a few moments before answering. My heart rate spiked and I felt a surge of anger rise in me, but I swallowed it down. Ashley, his voice was cautious, like he knew this conversation wasn't going to be easy. Mom asked me to call you. She wants to talk. I didn't know what to say. My first instinct was to tell him off, to finally say all the things I had kept buried for so long, but something inside me held me back. I don't know if I'm ready to talk to her, I said slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. I need time, James. He was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his tone was softer. She's really sorry, she didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't know what to make of that. Was he really speaking on her behalf, or was he just trying to guilt-trip me into forgiving her? Part of me wanted to believe that things could be fixed, that we could go back to the way things were, but I knew that wasn't possible. "I'll think about it," I said, ending the call without giving him the satisfaction of more words. In the weeks that followed, I found myself thinking more and more about my mother. The guilt started to creep back in, but it didn't have the same hold over me. I had done the best I could. The phone didn't ring for a while after that, but one day, out of nowhere, my mom left a message. It was short, simple, and full of regret. "I don't know if you'll ever be ready to talk to me, but I just want you to know that I love you. I always have. I'm sorry for everything." I listened to the message over and over, but this time when I heard her voice, it didn't feel like I was drowning. It felt like a whisper from the past, an acknowledgement of what had been, but also an acceptance that things had changed. I didn't call her back, not yet at least, but I felt something shift inside me. Maybe one day we could rebuild, but for now I was okay. I had done the hardest thing I could do. I had walked away from a toxic cycle, and in doing so I had started to rebuild myself. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure: I was finally living my life for me.